Hello, hello, everybody on Twitter, YouTube. We are live with the Allo Alliance Builder Space number 12. This is our 1 year anniversary of our monthly spaces we've been doing, since last year. And this one's going to be centered around the Allo Alliance and featuring, a few of the builders and projects that we've, talked to in the past, as well as new ones. So excited to have everybody tuned in. Currently, we have Paul, Sophie, and Matt on the stream. So what's up, Matt? How you doing? What's up, Paul? And hey, Sophie.
Yeah, for 1 year. That's
I know.
pretty awesome. I feel like I first started joining like 3 months ago, I want to say. So I missed a
Yeah,
good chunk of the early
yeah.
days.
Our first one was grant ships and hypercerts. So
Nice.
with Beckers and of course Jordan, Matt, and like I remember I didn't know if it would even last. I was like, oh, maybe we'll try this out. We'll see if we'll see if this is something. And I think it's been great because it's nice to like get a lot of insights and we've recently been publishing them on YouTube, so you could even get the insights of like previous spaces. But some really good conversations, like really good, and then a lot of um, like great things discussed. And I think that really a lot of people know Allo Alliance. There's a lot of people that are on the spaces like Rocket Man, yourself, Graven, Jord, Mahesh, like um, actually, did we do no, we didn't do spaces with Karma Gap yet. But yeah, like that's a lot of builders. So it's very cool to have that like kind of community we've been cultivating. Um, I got a couple questions so we could kick things off with. So let's see.
Um, do you know what's going on with the HyperSearch project? That's the one
Yeah,
that you mentioned that I haven't heard from recently.
it's actually funny. Holkey messaged me because we applied to be evaluators on the Greenpill side. Um, so yeah, haven't tuned in much since I want to say like last year, like end of last year when we did a workshop with them. I know Bitbeckers is now working more on Ma Earth, like building a grant tool for them. Um, so yeah, I'm definitely still curious to learn more about what they have like cooking. I know they have the marketplace. That's like the last update I knew about, which is um, pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know. Do you know anything or what's your take?
No, yeah, I haven't heard from them, or I haven't been following them, so I haven't seen their latest updates yet recently.
Yeah. So okay, I got a couple things here. First one, we got how did you learn about the Allo protocol? Um, well, we have ways we support each other in the Allo Alliance. I guess that's a good one. And mostly hops on while we're chatting. But yeah, maybe we could start there about like what is the Allo Alliance like for anybody who's just tuning in and seeing this name Allo Alliance. Um, really, I would kind of give some background and context. I said the Allo Alliance started as um, probably really started initially with like the Allo Builders Advancement Round to a degree that kind of created the incubation or kind of like the kind of filtering of projects that were in that round. And then afterwards, um, when there was the Gitcoin Allo post, like do they make sense together or apart? Then like we reached out to like a few of the Allo builders within the round and started like synergizing on like potentially putting a proposal for like stewarding the protocol, etc. And then Allo Capital was launched like shortly after. And then from there, I think a lot of us got pretty involved there. And then had the DAO design contest, helped to facilitate that. And then I think after ETH Denver, I feel like there's kind of a, Allo Capital is figuring some things out on their side. And I think us as Allo builders wanted to continue to have a space to sense make, kind of, figure things out. And that's kind of when things came back into the fold. And now we have weekly discussions where, we kind of just catch up on like how our weeks have gone and, what we've been working on and trying to find different collaboration points and areas where we could work together. So that's basically what the Allo Alliance I'd say is right now. Like, we've talked at times about like formalizing it in different ways and adding different aspects. But really, it's just like a community where you feel like a space to just come share, what you're working on, share where like you need support, and be able to get feedback from I think a group of great builders that are really driving the space forward. So yeah, I don't know, Paul, is that a good description of the Allo Alliance?
Yeah, that lines up with what I've been experiencing coming to the Allo Alliance calls, and yeah, so much of the kind of rationale for building on Allo protocol was the community of other builders that were using it. Um,
Mhm.
and this actually came up in a conversation yesterday with Will Ruddock, and he was like, "How come you guys didn't use like Tally or Agora for your like DAO framework?" And yeah, I was like walking through our initial like dev conversations where we're looking at all the frameworks like Aragon OS X, which had just launched, and like the governor contracts and Allo protocol, and the like dev thing that the devs wanted to do was just create a framework from scratch, because that would be like the best way to have it be most applicable and most
Mhm.
efficient just for exactly what we wanted to build. But we kind of understood that there's um, like more than just a smart contract framework when you're building on another protocol like that. Um, and no matter what protocol we were going to have to use with for us with gardens, with conviction voting being connected to all these custom voting weight systems and all of our parameters, it was no matter what going to take a huge amount of customization and kind of like adapting the framework to meet our standards. So to some extent it was arbitrary which one that we chose, and that the like main reason that we wound up building on Allo protocol was because of this network of communities, and it seemed
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
the right group of people who were kind of aligned on this vision of like capital allocation, public goods funding, and regenerative finance architecture. So yeah, that really felt like um, the the kind of compelling reason for Allo Protocol, and it feels like the Allo Alliance is the like a really good kind of um, implementation of what makes that work really well.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. Um, yeah, I think same here. I learned about the protocol probably sometime late 2023. But yeah, I really my take was always on the network effects and kind of that ability to tap into that. And I know there's some so and then speaking about the protocol, because I think there's kind of been a shift now, right? From not just focusing on the protocol, but focusing on like this allocation ecosystem of tools and mechanisms. But bringing it back to the protocol, I feel like there's so much there in regards to like the registry, which enables you to like create profiles under a shared standard. Then there's of course the strategies, which I think was like kind of the main selling point of Allo like protocol initially. I still see a lot of potential there, as well as the pools and management. Um, this seems like maybe right now, like the pools and the strategy would be more so to explore at like an ERC level, like enshrining them not just at like a contract level, but at even lower on the within the protocol. Um, and yeah, so I'm still very bullish. I know from the post that for Gitcoin GG24, they're going to need a grants registry. So the registry will live on in some way. Who knows what that looks like? Whether that's transferring all the data that was on a contract into like attestations, or deploying a new contract, or using the same. But it's just the like Owl has so much that it's already, I feel like, done and benefited, and kind of creating this shared layer around public good projects, and yeah, metadata around those projects. Cool. Let me
Yeah,
see this is here. Sub Nansel. If you're able to turn your camera on, that'd be awesome. But totally understand if you can't. Let's see. Let's see. We gotta get some more owl abilities here. I think. What the hell? They're all hiding. I know the Grand Chips crew is meant to be here. Gonna send them a reminder. Let's just see. Okay, let's see. So while more people join, what other talking points do we have? We got GG24. Maybe Paul, we could talk about GG24. Kind of your thoughts there. And I guess if you guys are just listening, I'll just move people on the screen. Have the camera on. My computer's starting to lag. Okay, there we go. It's gonna be me. If you have a camera on the part. So curious on yeah, we were actually talking about this in our region coordination call just before, but curious, yeah, about GG24. I know you shared a draft, so some ideas around what that could look like from a garden's perspective. So maybe we'll love to hear you just kind of share that and could riff on that for a little bit.
Yeah, so the context for that with GG24, the transition is away from obviously quadratic voting and the entire grant stack, which is like deprecated at this point. So this GG24 setup being that there's problem statements of Ethereum public goods funding, and that problem statement kind of becomes the theme for a round, if you want to call it that. And so this is kind of obviously reframed everyone who's been building rounds and operating rounds, and like in the past having done community rounds for Gitcoin, where you kind of have a funding allocation that you're dedicating to however the program you think is going to be most effective, like setting it up that way. That's kind of been, it feels like to me at least, that has been expanded to become the main GG24 round format, and it centers around this problem statement. And so yeah, working with AFO and Koi, I am drafting what I think is a good problem statement for that. And it's still a work in progress, but the kind of core thesis of our problem statement is that we don't have an effective means of transitioning public goods funding from startup and small grants for people to build like a prototype of a project into a mid-stage kind of investment arm that can take a product from, okay, this is cool, we like it, and it has some users, to getting the amount of investment needed to actually bring that to, as Iwaki calls it, unicorn level. I don't know what we define as unicorns in our space. I guess it'd be a market cap of $1 billion. But yeah, and you can kind of see that with the Gitcoin rounds, like the early rounds, like it was Uniswap and 1inch, all these massive crypto projects came out of those early Gitcoin rounds. And at some point that formula stopped working. And in more recent Gitcoin rounds, it doesn't seem to convert early projects into these massive self-sufficient public goods products that tons of people get value out of.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the problem statement is how do we get the investment and like pick out the projects that are showing promise and get them the funding and the support and whatever it is that they need to get to level 3 from level 2.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, and welcome to the call, George. We'd love to have you chime in when ready. Do you think with because the initial rounds do you think it's just like a scarcity thing? Just more people became aware of Gitcoin over each GG round and how successful it could be, and now it's just like a lot of projects and just not as much, and the pie hasn't really grown as much, and actually might even shrunk a little bit from previous, like maybe the first rounds might even been more funding. But yeah, I feel like, do you think that's a part of the equation to where like it's kind of affected things?
My theory is that the early rounds got a little bit lucky, and it was a new novel concept back then. The fundamental structural issues that I see with quadratic funding as it was working is that the funding sources needed to use it as marketing and ecosystem development. And so you saw the majority of the funding coming from specific networks or protocols, and kind of carving out that funding for specifically getting people to build on their space, whatever their space is. So like from a funding perspective, the main value of Gitcoin quadratic funding, I think, became marketing and ecosystem growth, which is good and like that is effective for those organizations. But it's like a obvious difference between like the general Ethereum public goods sustainability funding. So that's the funding sources had a specific motive that wasn't necessarily going to create that type of Uniswap unicorn. And then on the other side, on the funding recipient side, there was a game to be played. And it's like you can consider quadratic funding a bottom-up governance, because the people funding are the ones determining where the matching funds are going. But once you understand the rules of that game, then it changes the strategy. And I think like more and more projects were just finding ways to get the matching funding that were not building a really good project that was getting more users and becoming more valuable to the world.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because early on, it probably QL probably worked really nicely in a lot of ways, because it's like people, but once you learn the game, it's been all right. We need a passport now. Okay, now we need COCM. Like kind of like now trying to like fight, play that game, and that's very insightful. I think, so I don't know. I hope to see with this dedicated domain shift that like you said, there's kind of a shift back to that focus and helping those projects grow. I know they did the mature builders round in GG23, which kind of was a little maybe getting back into a realm of like highlighting certain projects. So maybe there's something to kind of build upon there, potentially. Yeah.
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 What's up, George? How you doing?
Pretty good yourself?
Doing good.
We're talking about like what, back in like 2019 and stuff, with people when they were funding, or 2018. I think the industry was very consolidated back then, right? Like it was much smaller, a lot less actors, and I think a lot of people knew what the meta was, right? Like they're the people that were here. They had a very good understanding of what is probably going to be the low hanging fruit and what needed to be funded. And there's a couple issues here where I think as that scope got wider and more distributed, Gitcoin and basically every other grants program began to focus a lot more on metrics, right? Which I don't think is a lot more is very different than perspective, right? And when you're funding things, perspective is going to play a big role. And I think having people with the right perspective is hard to quantify, but is ultimately, the kind of the deciding factor in a lot of cases, on whether or not you fund something, super valuable or not. There's also a bit of a, like with metrics, if they're not extremely tight, they're very easily gamed. And if there isn't the right processes around verification and stuff like that, we've talked about this many times, but like it's incredibly difficult to pin down. And I think they wanted to get some metrics rolling, but if you just get something built, it's not necessarily like the best guide or for allocating funding. I think what's encouraging though is about the DDA is that you can break down lots of these funding directions and have domain experts, and maybe that will begin to introduce a lot of the it'll introduce, I think, more perspective back into the system, potentially, right, if it's done well.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're able to decide, like, okay, who has a good perspective on these things and who doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's what I hope to see too. And it's something that we always talk about, like, of creating a more narrow scope, like a more sharper focus, so that people have higher context when allocating or voting or what, etc. So yeah, I definitely see this shift. I'm curious if, like, do you guys know if it's only going to be these dedicated domain rounds or programs, I guess you could say, or is it also going to be that and like the OSS rounds they used to have? Like, do we know that yet, or so up in there?
I have no idea, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Okay.
I would venture to guess that it probably will be just purely domain focused.
That's what. Yeah. If I had to bet, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing kind of related to that I'm not clear on it also is so that one of the rewards in the last community round set was with the grant ships voting. The top 3 community rounds are like pre-approved essentially for another round of the next in GG24. So with this new DDA setup, I like my kind of assumption is that the hope is that those community rounds will move into a DDA structure, because there isn't really like a process to define for how a community round would operate separate from those main rounds. So that seems like something that's still unclear about GG24.
Unclear to us too as well. But we obviously want to push toward having some of the rules honored and stuff like that.
I mean, for us with Gardens, we want to be in the DDA rounds. That's the goal. So I don't know what the other 2 community rounds are planning, but it does feel like the natural evolution or next step.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier today on the region coordination call, and there's kind of like, is it meant to be where a domain gets funded and then like the community rounds get access to that domain? Like, I think there's just a lot of things up in there, but my hope is to see Gardens get a domain, Web2 universities get a domain, region coordination get a domain, because this allows for more experimentation and things of that nature. So TBD. But I think this goes to show, though, like with the Gardens round, region coordination, that we and Web3 universities, like, building on the right track to a degree, and kind of so it's nice to get that validation from the voting, and hopefully that means something. I think it will. Okay, let's see. What are the talking points? So, Jordan, I guess you're on the grant ship side of things. So it'd be nice to hear you chime in around. Well, at the first part, we talked a little bit about Allo, and a lot of this might feel like kind of repeating yourself, because we talk all the time and have a lot of these conversations. But just for the masses, maybe you could like give some of your thoughts around the Allo Alliance, how you view it, maybe, and like, looking at some of these questions. But curious, like, how do you view the Allo Alliance? What is the value add for you there?
For right now, from like what it's doing currently, it seems like a strong support network for people, and kind of a networking vessel for people who are either round operators, people who allocate capital or build tools to do so, and probably people within other domains I'm not thinking of. And I think even under that, just those minimal functions, it could be very useful. But it definitely seems like you guys are trying to explore other things as well. But yeah, even just those 2 functions, it could be really, really useful.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think just having a space to talk and chat is it's very valuable. It's kind of um, underrated. Well, I'm actually open. Forgot to open the chat, so I have the chat here open. So let's say what's up to the chat. I think you guys could view it as well. Shout out to Time. It's always on the calls. Uh, Matt, what are you doing? You should be on the stream. Why, why, why is Matt? You see, you got the and then what's up, Rodrigo? How's it going? Cool, yeah. So chat's active. So definitely feel free to chime in there. Feel free to ask any questions too, by the way. So if you're hearing this, and everybody that's on the stream, feel free to drop a question. We could respond. We could view them here. So yeah.
For some reason, on my chat it says sending messages only supported for hosts. Enjoy the stream.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Am I able to change that? We're learning all in real time here. Maybe okay. I don't want to do anything where I mess something up, but we'll figure that out for the next stream, I guess. But yeah, so Rodrigo. Yeah, I think what is it? We'll probably get some more people trickling a little bit during in the next maybe few minutes. But I guess another talking point I have here is how we can collaborate as Allo builders to build the right tools in the right markets. I think that's been a prompt, something that I know in this space with like the scarcity of funding right now and kind of just the need for understanding for growth and sustainability. I think there's a recognition that we need to start looking into other markets, other places to grow and deploy our tools. And I think there's still a lot to kind of figure out before I think we get there. And I feel like Q3 could be that bridge with like the potential of GG24 and these more dedicated domain rounds coming about to enable us to deploy and validate in certain locales and areas, and then from there be able to identify the markets and get funding from local communities. So I'm just curious on Paul, maybe curious on your thoughts on how we build the right markets, how do you build the right tools in the right markets?
So I've had this kind of idea brewing for a long time of like our adoption tactic to beyond just our dog fooding our own stuff that we're building. And one of the ideas that I kind of get excited about is we have our tools, and we have now this like very kind of moded domain expertise in like the tools that we built are complicated enough that most people can't pick them up super easily unless they have a lot of motivation to do that. So one way to get over that friction and to get rid of that moat is to find projects that exist already that fit within the like characteristics of an organization that we think our stuff works for already, and go in there as a third party and set it up for them and have it work for them with the least possible, the least amount of work for that project to do on their own. And I like, what comes to mind is open source software projects that have a lot of activity already. Maybe they're Web 2 or they're Web 3, but haven't for some reason been like using the kind of public goods funding mechanism landscape. And then just like dedicate our resources to setting up infrastructure to make a self-sustaining organization out of an existing successful project. Like I just think it would be really like relatively easy for us to step in and like look at a project and say, who are the top contributors here? Okay, you. Okay, here's the funding, and then like contributors, without needing to do much work, just start receiving funding for what they're doing, and like with the infrastructure behind that makes that sustainable, which is capital formation, the decentralized decision making that continues to correctly identify who's creating value for that project and where the needs are and what needs funding for that specific organization. I think, yeah, that's an approach that I haven't seen anyone in our space use before, that I think like gets rid of a lot of the friction issues of how complex the stuff that we built accidentally is.
That's a
That's
great
just
point.
one idea.
I'm curious to hear George chime in, because I feel like you might have some thoughts there. He's there. If not, I
It
can
definitely seems like that's I don't know, part of where they would like to go with Allo. You know, is trying to figure out the right mechanism for the right projects or domain. So you know, exploring each mechanism and cataloging them, seeing what they're good for, testing them out, and would be helpful. I think educating people on how to use them and what the like actual purpose is for them, or what problem they're trying to solve would be kind of a useful exploration. Kind of lightweight too, not a huge lift in that regard, but yeah.
I think my take is, I think that makes a ton of sense. I think the one area there is around the finances, like, because we need to identify projects that have the funds to pay for these services, right? 'Cause I feel like a lot of these projects don't want to have as much funds, or kind of in a similar space where we are with our projects, where we're trying to get more funding and things like that. So I think we'd have to be able to sell it as a strong value add, that like, you investing this money as a service to help set up this infrastructure is going to help you, be able to grow and be more efficient. So like, it's a good investment, because I think initially we probably would be working with organizations that don't have as much funding, but maybe Paul, you're thinking about more larger orgs. Like, what are this kind of size of communities, organizations you think?
Well, I'm just imagining that when the time comes where you're asking the project to invest, you're actually pitching them an investment, which means, of course, tokenizing the project
Okay.
and like, yeah, the coming in with like a comprehensive strategy for taking a project that's already shown success and saying, if you do X, Y, and Z, and then have a token, then you can be self-sustainable, and you now have an instrument that your community can invest in and people outside your community can invest in, that's actually going to function as a store of value for the project and for the public good.
So public good pump.fund type, where like, this is actually helping people launch tokens, or launch, but like not in a way that's more sustainable, right? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, to me, like what we have built with this technology is the ability to tokenize organizations, and like that's the major unlock. Like I guess I think on their own, our funding mechanisms are not much of an innovation, but and anyone has been able to choose how to spend money between different domains of an organization any way that they've wanted throughout history. And to some extent, especially when we're dealing with public goods, the outcomes are subjective, because the mission is not profit. And so, if you're a food bank, your mission is feeding the homeless. And it's like there's different ways, like, this is when we get into metrics, like, okay, how many homeless people did you feed? And it's like, oh shit, we're optimizing for feeding numbers of homeless, and now we've accidentally like created this incentive mechanism to like create new homeless people, and like the impact metrics themselves fuck up the systems that we're trying to solve. But like, there is, like George was saying, at the end of the day, people with the right perspective on the problem, who are the right people to be making decisions to address those problems for an organization. And the key with what we're building is enabling those people to have the resources that they need to do what they already understand to be the things that need to happen for that organization to be successful.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. Yeah, I think tokenization, I think is, for me, I'm a little scared of it just because of what we've seen of kind of just like, oh, you can't
It's scary.
token.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. Like, I think you're totally right. Like, it's a big unlock in our space, being able to tokenize things. Like, that's core, very core. And yeah, we just got to find ways to approach it in a way that, makes sense. And yeah.
That's the key. Like,
Yeah.
tokenization's definitely spooky for me because it's the way it's done currently is very, like, it's kind of like going public sort of on
Yeah.
early stage projects, which doesn't seem to work. I mean, it just doesn't, right? Like we've seen how many projects do it over and over and over again, and then the success rate is really low. And I think it's because you have to manage a public instrument in addition to a product, and then also the people that buy the token, they don't have the same like time horizons that say a investor would, right? That's another issue. So I think there are configurations and ways you could tokenize, but I don't think it's going to be the super fun, like pump.fun, like fully open access tokenized. I could be dead wrong about this. It's not really my forte, but I mean that's just like my read on it, right? It's not. It doesn't seem like the right fit for a lot of really like early projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree 100%. This is a good time to reintroduce the 2-token model. For anyone who's not familiar, two tokens, 1 token for governance and 1 token for value accrual. And there's a lot of really nice benefits when you split those 2 functions, because in a lot of ways they inherently conflict with each other. But a governance token, a pure governance token that just distributes ownership of an organization to the group of people that care about that organization's mission, is relatively easy to do. And if it's done upfront with the understanding that it's never going to be an investment, that this is not going to be something that you're going to be able to buy and it's going to go up in value, then it's really easy to make sure that only the right people have that token. And there's like, you get rid of any incentive for anyone to hold a community ownership token if they don't want to have a stake in the community. So I think a lot of what poisons the tokenization of our space is this get rich mentality and number go up. And like that's all pump.fun is people, it's a casino, and people are gambling because they think that they're going to get rich, or they think there's a chance of getting rich. And so there's obviously a ton of value in equity financial instruments that accumulate value. But in the case of public goods and decentralized organizations in Web3, I think that mentality does more damage to the decision-making arm of the organization than it does benefit it. And so we need to split them. We need to have the governance be something that's more freely issued early in a project. And the earlier you do it, the more you establish a decentralized set of people from day one, that you don't have to like try to turn, like in Gitcoin's case, turn a centralized organization into a DAO after you already have all this momentum and all these processes and organizational structures that are really hard to undo. Do that, like decentralized governance from day one, and distributing ownership to the right people fluidly over time as the project keeps building and as some things succeed or some things fail, and then like saving that challenge of building the value accrual token for a time when the organization is already successful. And that's more like the IPO moment of like, okay, we are successful. We're ready to like go public and have money come in that's gonna like become our endowment.
Do you see this as kind of like a early board, basically, like that decentralized ownership? What sort of decisions do you think they would make?
So I probably the best ideas for that would be like what we have with gardens, because we have our governance token for gardens now, and the types of decisions that we've already left out to gardens token holders are things like requesting funding for new OSS builds and signaling which builds should be prioritized next. And then also adding and removing signers to the multi-sig, having essentially like a democratic system of fluidly updating the organization to the people who are currently best suited to grow the organization.
So kind of like a root level backstop, basically, for bringing in an operational team.
Right, and it like any project in this early stage is going to be, it should be centralized. There should be a small group of people that's agreeing on a roadmap together and working towards a shared vision for that. So I think like not messing with that process, but still having the seeds planted already where those people are accumulating governance and ownership in the community, and also the community's partners and users and funders and anyone who is supporting that project in that moment, making sure that the ownership is freely going to the people who are creating value for the organization. Like I see it more as planting the seeds for that ownership working before you have that moment where you like need it to suddenly work, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. I think it's tricky, right? Because you can go full on founder mode, small team in the beginning, but it's hard for people to have like a backstop against any, because we're working in a sort of distributed, sometimes anonymous space. So I could see kind of a distributed group to backstop a lot of the really hardcore actions, or someone to hold them accountable, basically. So I think have you looked into the like Moloch V3? Kind of has a dual token system by default. One can be, you can even set whether or not like each token is transferable or non-transferable. So like a standard config I used to see a lot would be like non-transferable shares, so kind of non-monetary, and then transferable loot token, basically, and that would be more of your monetary token.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a V3 Moloch coming.
Oh, it's been out for like 3 years.
Okay. This is the one I'm familiar with then.
Yeah. And there was a lot of experiments around the kind of that two token, one monetary, one non-monetary. But yeah, I don't think the messaging got drilled home, because I still think it's a good design.
Yeah. I think it's for true decentralization. I think the transferability and the liquidity is important. But I think non-transferable and no non-financial. I from what I've seen from that seems to consolidate the power in the same way. The like what liquidity is enabling is the ability for new evolutions of the groups of people who are stewarding the project. And I think like everyone sees the downsides of that, which is people can buy tokens and buy governance, and like make decisions just with money. But we have governance infrastructure now that makes it so that doesn't need to be the case. So you can protect against the people buying votes through just the mechanisms themselves. So like once you've freed yourself from that punishment of governance token liquidity, then I think the benefits become a little bit more clear of like, okay, you can have this fluid organizational structure of people coming in and out. And, you know, if someone's done like rage quitting, this is like, it's a good thing for people to leave and not be part of the organization anymore. If they're done.
I'm curious because I feel like when we talk about DAOs, it's so broad, the different types of DAOs you can have, and things of that nature. So I'm kind of curious, like, I don't know, I feel like because I'm trying to understand like what model do you see where in like more traditional companies, organizations where somebody comes in or a group of people come in, they start it, and then typically, you know, few people will stay for a long period of time. That's like I feel like that's kind of the you know the norms. Like few people, few group, and then few of those people typically stay for a decent few, at least a few years. So having that in mind, I feel like could help because I feel like sometimes we try to approach governance in a way like that those people don't exist or not really focus on them and try to figure out a structure where anybody could come in and partake, but that's not always beneficial for advancing the project. Um, and I really think I could see some DAO communities being more like that to where they create like a structure and it's like very flexible, people come and go. But I feel like typically, especially if it's like a project-based DAO or something that's looking to, you know, accrue value around the product, or some type of IP, you typically need people that are willing to drive that forward for at least a few years, typically. So I just wonder how that factors into governance.
So like, yeah, and you can see just within the different realms of public goods how those different structures take place. Like like a lot of charities have this like almost company like structure where you have a brand, you have a like person who's in charge, a CEO who's managing everyone within this nonprofit to you know, to like the Red Cross would be maybe an example of like a really large, successful, centralized public goods funding organization. And that structure is really different than, for instance, an open source software project where that really the like central piece of the project is the code, the GitHub repository, and different contributors are coming in and out and spending a few months contributing to this open source software project and pushing PRs and updating the platform or whatever that software is doing. And that's like naturally this kind of different, more evolutionary structure for like building value than. So yeah, there's like clearly not a one size fits all model that's going to work for everyone.
Yeah, but I think what you highlight around like kind of the before IPO, because IPO like before success, like that's when they meant to launch the value, and that's the best time to launch it when you know you're in a strong position, you have something that has a market fit, you're not still trying to validate that by getting the token to give you more funds to then validate that the product works. So I think that makes sense a lot of ways. So definitely curious to see that explored. Like just quickly segue us because we got a few questions in the chat. And I want to make sure the chat is feeling some love. So we had a question earlier from Green Pill Cape Town. I think that's Alwyn. How do you know if an early GG project has the potential to become a unicorn? I think that's a great question. Maybe, well, yeah, maybe anybody want to take a stab at that? Oh, yeah, thanks for highlighting that. Good stuff.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And I think the short answer is you don't, and you're making a bet at the end of the day. Like, yeah, does a VC know which investments that it's investing in are unicorns? You have to look at the team. You have to look at the problem space that they're in. You have to look at their approach to those problems. But no matter how much you learn, you're still making a bet. You don't actually know, and things can change. So, but yeah, I think I think like if we're doing it right, then it does look more like VC due diligence, and then like on top of that, which is something that really is not happening in Web3 public goods funding, which is ongoing support and like providing your ongoing resources and help to those teams to get where they're going. Yeah, because if you can, if you're investing that money and you can also provide connections to platforms that are going to work well with you and connections to other people in that space, and someone that you can meet with experience that you can go to, that can kind of like tell you where you're screwing up. That's the type of stuff that I am not seeing happening in Web3 that is clearly like pretty critical for getting an organization to get where it needs to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think there's two things that it's kind of key in a sense that might make it a little bit easier to identify unicorns because we're working with on-chain data typically, right? A lot of times VCs, you're investing in companies, they're private, they're providing you data, like you're kind of having to trust that the data they're providing you is accurate and these things. Whereas that's the nice part of us building in the space of building public goods, that the data is very transparent. You could see and track that. So I think that's a benefit that makes it easy, but still, it's still like you're still making a huge bet. And then to speak to what Paul was saying around, which I would phrase as incubation. Yeah, there's not enough incubation of projects in our space. There's kind of this chasm of either you're public goods, so you're just going purely grants, or you're like startup based project, so you're going for like the VC funds. But there's no in the middle part for like, no, we're public good oriented, but we need support. We need like some incubation. We need incubator to help us, grow and scale. Because I think people see public goods like, I don't know what people think public goods aren't meant to scale, but they do need to scale. So definitely need more support there. Yeah. Joe, do you have any thoughts on this question?
Heard a couple terms that not sure if like the industry has like broad alignment around, so it's kind of hard to nail down. But unicorn, so that's what, market cap or FDV? I mean, wasn't Fartcoin at one point a unicorn by that logic? So that's something to consider. Also, like, if I don't know, I guess if I was, I don't really, I'm not an investor really in any way, but I would look for products that, for people building products that are already sort of, like, if you want to do something, some core function in this space, and at this point it's so useful that you pretty much just have to use that, like it's a no-brainer, like then that's probably what I would consider as something that has that potential. If I think Naval makes that analogy where there's some treasure at the bottom of the ocean, and you're that utility that people need in order to get down to the bottom of the ocean to get it. That's sort of a good position to be in. There's not a whole lot of products in that. It's kind of hard to locate that, and I think it's always been hard, right? In software, I think one of the issues is we get mixed up on signal, right? Like, again, I mentioned, if Fartcoin was a unicorn at one point, then the signals get crossed, and the like classic or the traditional ways of finding utility, or just utility, right, is going to get difficult because there's all this attention going to other things that just blow up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. Well, I know we're at the hour mark, so definitely we'll speed through the rest of these questions in the chat, and thanks everybody so far who's been chiming in and sending messages. Really appreciate it. All right, we got one. Have you seen the approach of BioDAOs in DeSci? No. Could you drop a link, Rodrigo? think this would be something for us to learn. Unless you guys have any insights on BioDAOs. But I think that this speaks to the right, there's so many types of DAOs, and I think maybe having an approach of trying to figure out what scope of the DAOs are we trying to create. I think typically when we think of DAOs, we're typically thinking kind of like the startup-based, project-based style, because we're building projects ourselves that eventually, probably would like to, have a token launch. But I think there's kind of two that I see. I see like the project level DAO, like based on our projects we're building within Dev Guild, Gardens, Grantships, and then also our community level ones like Green Pill Network, Refi DAO, kind of the larger umbrellas. So those are kind of the two models I feel like I participate in more readily. And then of course there's the larger L2 blockchain DAOs that, I'm part of to some degree, but very much just a small minnow in that pond. So yeah, there's so many different types of DAOs. So yeah, definitely, Rodrigo, drop a link. That'd be great. Another one we have is more public good QAC than PUM. Is that what? I'm not sure about the pump. You guys get the pump part? Oh, pumped up fun. Okay, it cut off for me here, so I'm gonna see like pump. Okay, pumped up fun, please. Yeah, you're right, Matt. Definitely. And then Matt also mentions RevNets. Yes. So I want shout out Flows, Verbs Accelerator, kicking off where you have a RevNet token model. I think Gardens is participating in that, right, Paul?
In RevNets?
No, the Verbs Accelerator, which is I think using RevNets, right?
No. Yeah, we're not in the Verbs Accelerator.
Oh, okay.
But we have a flow for the Garden.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, cool stuff. Let's see what else we got. We got incentives to create new homeless people. Yeah, we don't want that. Yeah. Let's see anything else. Rodrigo's got some updates. There'll be some updates with Meso Reef regarding that. Okay, cool, sweet. Cool, man. These comments are kind of slagging for me, so let's see. All right. Bonding curves. Okay. There's a lot of stuff here. Let's see. Any more comments? I got Jorge saying here, let's grow gardens. Let's go. Let's do that. We did a co-op. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forgot I had to play. Yeah, my bad. But yeah, I think that's most of the comments. Let's see if I'm missing any. Yeah, no, I think got through all the main stuff. So yeah, just want to, a little bit over 10, but just want to really shout out everybody, George, Paul, particularly for joining the stream and chatting Allo Alliance. You guys are, some of the most integral members and, always showing up for calls. So very much appreciate you taking the time to walk through some of these discussion points. And yeah, I'm excited to keep building with you guys and learning how we can support each other. So yeah, so thank you guys. Thanks everybody who hopped on the stream. Very much appreciate you as well. Yeah, Paul, Jordan, any last words before we end the stream?
No, thanks for having me.
Tell me the cloud. I don't know
Yeah, I don't have anything either. That was thanks for organizing this, Alpha.
It's good stuff. So whoever did the clap, end this with the clap, close us out. Thank you. Bye-bye.